and we can start. Hello, it's May 6th. Welcome to the retro for our spring 2025 Tufts Capstone project. Um, we've got some discussion topics or questions in our agenda, so we can kind of go through those. We could also try to like slot our notes into that document based on just kind of the feedback that you all have. It doesn't have to be super structured, but we've got kind of questions to like guide us if we like run out of discussion topics kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, we could just kind of start in on the first one that we have written down here, which is what aspects of the partnership with GitLab were the most helpful to you and why?
For me, I think that it was really helpful that we got like mentorship on like every like single aspect of the project. Like there was always someone like a designer or like a tech lead or a researcher to kind of like guide us through the process and also like assist us in like making screeners or like um kind of like preparing the materials for our research and design. So I think that like having direct mentorship was like really helpful for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. On top of that, also think that like the weekly meeting, where we check in on the progress of the past week is really helpful, and getting the feedback and any, um, like um, like just getting feedback and from you guys are also really helpful. And I feel like the weekly check in are like a safe space for us to like voice any concerns or things that we are stuck on.
Yeah, I definitely second the meetings and the direct mentorship. And I also wanted to add, I remember like at the beginning with the discovery kind of like a portion of the project, providing all the resources, like the screener resources and the, I think like interview tips and stuff like that. Those were also really helpful that I wasn't necessarily expecting. I was like, because I remember like there was a moment of just a bunch of links, and even though we didn't get through all of them, or at least I didn't, the ones that I did look at were very helpful.
And another small thing is the detailed meeting agenda and the meeting notes. Um, I think
Mm-hmm.
those are really helpful when like looking back.
Are there any aspects of the partnership with GitLab that you think could be improved?
Like, not necessarily. I think the only thing that I'm, which I don't even know how feasible it is, but like the in-person part of it, I think it's always like interesting to, I don't know, dynamic wise, but honestly, like in terms of like the actual material of like the feedback and stuff, like I don't have any improvement,
Yeah, I agree with Emily. I think I don't know like specific points of improvement. Maybe like having like in-person meetings would be really nice. But I think we like the project was like went really well. It was really smooth and like there was a lot of communication, like a lot more than I know like other groups have had. So I think it was really good.
Yeah, I don't think you have anything to add to that either.
And if there's anything, that occurs to any of you later after this conversation that you want to share with us over email or anything, please let us know. What's something that you're most proud of for yourself from this project?
I think for me, it's like I'm really proud of how far like we came because when we started, we all had like zero knowledge on like software development, like no idea what like each technical terms are. So kind of like having like a really good understanding of how like GitLab works and how we can like integrate like our potential feature and like seeing it like actually come to life. I think like it's really amazing how like we started from nothing and like we actually have a feature that like could be implemented.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I had mentioned it too, and I think somebody had asked kind of the why you picked the project, and I feel like that's also why I'm proud of the progress that we made in the project. Like, say honestly, same thing that Moya said, um, kind of like having started from nothing, yeah, and coming up with a feature. I think also though, just like the kind of confidence in the choices that we were making because of all the way that we had organized our information. I feel like we had pretty good documentation of everything. And so when it came to kind of like synthesizing everything and like backing everything up, it felt pretty confident in that.
Yeah, I second on the points, and I also think that I achieved like all the goals I set in the beginning when you ask what do you want to or what skills do you want to get out of this project, and I mentioned like going through the research like moderating and coming up with script and also like iterating on the design, and I think that I did get myself involved in different parts of the process, and I'm really proud of that.
And then also it's just occurring to me too, like we all know this happened, but it's like especially the mock or the grooming part of it where it's like we got to meet with like implementation team. I think that was also really cool. And the fact that like you guys were pointing out that it was different than what other groups had done before too. I'm glad we were able to do that for sure. And then like also keep with our timeline for the most part, even though there was like little setbacks or we had to like crunch in like act or tasks for like especially that last week. But I think I'm glad we were like able to fit everything in for sure.
You mentioned some of this a little bit, I guess, but what are some new skills or knowledge that you gained from the project?
I can go first. I think the skills I gained was like working with the senior people in the team, and getting like getting feedback and knowing what kinds of feedback that we want from them and what they expected from us is a way of collaboration that would be really helpful in a real world setting. And the second point is I learned how to um, go through the whole process of research, like from screening to coming up with script and to moderating, which is something that I did not have much chance to do in my previous experiences. So it was really nice. And lastly, just iterating on the feedback and um, user insights that we got, and knowing what um, feedback would be valuable in the end and what we should like save for the future development. So that's sort of like priority is also a thing that I think is really helpful in a real world setting.
I think for me, more so like building on existing like kind of tools that we had been using or like I specifically I'm thinking of like the ideation process. I feel like that was we went like a little bit more in depth I felt than like I had done in other projects. And also just the interviewing or the yeah, the interviewing the initial interviewing process and the revisiting scripts. I feel like in other projects, it's just kind of like a one and done deal. Like you have your one interview script and then because it's like a short project and you just conduct it and then that's it. But I feel like with this one, it was like throughout the interviews, I would like notice like points of like where the flow just wasn't um like the best. And so like we would just go back and adjust it. And just like yeah, getting more comfortable with like moderating interviews and stuff. I think that was definitely like form or skills that were like strengthened during this time.
For me, it's pretty similar to everyone said. Like going through the whole process for me, I have never written like a screener or like done a concept test before. So I think a lot of them were like really new. It's like something I learned this project, and also kind of like how I like synthesize like research and like choose which feature to go with. I think there was a lot of dilemma with like, should I do the pin or like the link tree? And like both are like valid qualitative reasons. So like kind of prioritizing the feature, like knowing how to move forward and like adapt to like the changes, the feedback is like really important.
Which honestly, that kind of brings me to a question that had come up for me while we were doing the write-up, where the idea of like when it came to what's it called, picking which feature to do, um, would you guys have done that any differently in terms of like, because I know for us, we just kind of, I think it was more so because of time, we kind of picked the initial paths to go onto, and then we tested those two, but. One thing I think that came up was the kind of like, I was thinking of like even just asking if we had had more time, like asking or like more interviewees, kind of where how they would rank all of the different problem areas that we had identified. Would you guys have done that, or would you guys have also kind of picked two, three general areas first, do you feel?
Hmm. It's a good question. I don't know. I'm trying to think right now
Mhm.
about what like the specifics of your like problem validation findings were. So I feel like it's definitely about the long comment threads. It's about the mismatch between the long comment threads and the description. Um, and I mean, I think that probably if I were trying to work on this problem, I would have stumbled on those existing issues that we have saying, hey, maybe we should think about some feature for pinning comments. Um, and might have started digging down that path. I probably also would have asked around, and someone like Marcel would have said, like, "Oh, I had an idea about this like a couple years ago." So I think we have the advantage of having kind of like, sort of a brain trust slash like oral history resource we can tap into with the rest of the team to see, what other ideas other people have had that are kind of stuck on the back burner. Um, like I guess this is maybe like almost a question about like like pragmatic strategy or something. Like I don't think there was anything about the way that you made decisions about these things that was like surprising, put it that way. Like I think it made sense the sequence that you went and you kind of I think it was probably helpful also that you came up with two really different ideas. Um Well, I mean, I guess it could have also been okay if they were like slight variations on one another, and then you like went with, the variation that worked better or something. But the fact that you had like two different solutions for the problem, I think meant that you had kind of a more varied testing process. So I think it like makes for more good stuff for your project. It does make it a little trickier. Like if you had more time, it probably would have been good to be able to dive in deeper on the link tree diagram stuff too.
Yeah, I agree what Chad said. And I think in the real scenario, like what I'm experiencing is normally we have this customer ticket coming in through. So probably Dasha also knows more about it. Like there's like customer requests, like big customers, like sometimes they have a very direct feature request that like, okay, we are having trouble on this and that. So perhaps like talking to the team like PM or other counterparts like sales counterparts, they might like give give me or give you some more insights like yeah, this is the really a big problem, so we have to like just put everything down including the user interviews outcome and then like okay, which one should we prioritize first. So I think that's normally how I work with my PM, my team. You can add more.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think before, so like a very practical example at GitLab that I just went through, right? We have a big surface area. So as in like, I think there is a pain point and I've been hearing it from customers across this, where it's, hey, we're having a lot of friction with onboarding new developers, or we're not really understanding how to use your issues feature and we just bought into GitLab. So you know that there's probably something going on around that area. Mine's different since I'm not the product manager for Plan. But you start user research, right? So you start with like a very wide kind of surface area, and then you start narrowing in. As you all know, I think you're just looking for a lot of signals and asking customers feedback. And also, we do have the benefit of internal dog fooding at GitLab, which I leverage personally a lot. So if I'm having a little bit of a trepidation around, like, is this actually going to solve it? As you saw in our mock grooving session, engineers will share their opinions, and the edge cases are something you're not thinking about. And I think as you build that muscle a little bit more, you start reading between the lines because not everyone's going to tell you this is not the way the solution should go because they're not 100% confident, but you start having your own internal confidence levels. And I'd say use those. And if you're feeling a little bit uncertain, think about it. Is it extra user research that you need? Maybe a few more internal chats or just getting eyes from your peers, as in, like, is this the right one? But you also have an engineering manager, a product manager. So don't take on this entire responsibility as like, if I don't make the right decision, it's all over. There's plenty of people and a team who will help you.
No, yeah, that
Yeah,
definitely makes sense.
that that does remind me of one thing that's very unique about your team is that I think it's probably unless you start a startup, it's going to be extremely rare that any of you are in a team where the entire team are all new to the thing. Like in the real world, you're going to have someone on the team who's been around a while, who knows some of the lore, who's like worked on this feature for a while or has worked on an adjacent feature or something. So usually within the team, there are other people who you can talk to, bounce ideas off of, who have like been around the block a bit with this. Okay, what's an area that you feel you still have some room for improvement?
For me, I think it's like more of the research aspect, like moderating the sessions. Well, I did like maybe a couple, but I think there's a lot of room to for improvement and kind of like adjusting, like Emily said, like how do I ask questions to like not lead them, but like get like insightful answers. So I think like um I tend to like stick to the script a lot and like not like dig deeper. But that's something that I want to work on and kind of do more of to be familiar with.
At first, my for sure one would say like design, like more technical, like design and using Figma or any other kind of like prototype platform. But also, Moya's point did bring up for me too. I think definitely as much as I was like the script part of it, kind of, I definitely felt like we had a lot of practice with. I think it's still for me, it's still also finding the balance between leading versus like probing more. Just because sometimes it's like, oh, like I said this one word that could be more leading. But yeah, I think the balance between leading and probing and then more technical in prototyping.
For me, it's like how to set like clear metrics in order to see like how my design or how our design like improves the user experience and which part of the design actually improves. And like we got the qualitative data from the users, but thinking back, I also think that like setting clearer metrics and would be pretty helpful in seeing like, oh, so we increased like by this much percentage, because like we improve on this specific like design feature. Yeah.
And then we have a sub question on this one, which is what steps can you take to improve in that area? Which, I don't know, I guess feel free to answer or not. I feel like some of that has an answer built into it and some of it doesn't.
Yeah, for me, I think it's definitely like if I ever just for the more so the technical stuff, kind of like, the little passion practice, just like I think for me it's really about just like getting familiarized with the little like tools and stuff, and different ways of like implementing different tools. Um, for the interview one, I don't really feel like I can't really think of a thing where it's like I could practice it, like other than like practicing interviews, but I don't really see myself doing that just off the fly. But yeah, I think just being maybe probably like just being more intentional when it does come to like having projects about thinking about like these particular things that I know I want to improve on, and then just like making an effort to do that.
Emily, are there any projects that you have maybe planned where you could use the tools that you want to get more familiar with, whether that's like if it's Figma, do you like, for example, there are a lot of open source projects that you could potentially get involved with and contribute designs using Figma. Like, do you have anything like that planned?
Yeah, not currently. I don't think I even really knew about like open source. I mean, it sounds like somewhat familiar, but don't know too much about those. But I guess I can definitely like look into them if that's like yeah, you're saying that's a thing to look into.
Yeah, no, that would be a good place to start. And we could probably share some with you if if it's helpful.
No, yeah, for sure. I would love that. Thanks.
Yeah, for me, I'm not too sure. Like same with Emily, like with interviews. I don't know when's like the next time I'll be conducting interviews, but like if it's like in the future, like um in my like job, like if I ever get the chance, like I would want to kind of like go more into research, like kind of like not have that as a main role, but also like supporting it and like contributing to that as well so that I can improve on that part of um that aspect of like research.
Yeah, and then like for the metrics to see why the design could improve, I'm not so sure like how um I could go on and then like do it differently. I guess like just collaborating more closely with the senior researchers and like setting clear metrics on what we should measure, and or just getting myself and like more familiarized with like the different metrics that are often used in the real world setting. That would be helpful.
I think I just a question popped up for me for you guys. Because like Moya's point of like becoming more well-rounded and stuff with like research. I'm wondering like how common is it for kind of like people in our field to be like a well-rounded kind of like researcher and like designer. Because I'm like in a perfect world, like I guess that would be ideal for everyone, but I'm like curious like how in actuality how common is that?
I think it really depends on where you spend the first 10 years of your career. If you work for like weird little startups, you're going to learn everything. If you like, you know, go straight to like, Publicis or KPMG or something, and like then you are going to have like a specific role where they don't really want you to do other things. So I personally spend a lot of time at very unstructured, everything's on fire all the time, little startups early in my career, and I think it's a great learning experience. It's like kind of like secretly I mean, you don't get paid well. I think that's the trade-off for sure. But it's like getting somewhat compensated to go to graduate school. But yeah, I think it's going to depend on where you are and what they want you to be doing. I think it's somewhat, well, I think it's changing. I think people who are, my ages, right, and like they're like late 30s and older than me, there's a lot of generalists because there's a lot of us who like, you know, I think programs like the one that you're in were like kind of just starting when I was in college. Like I don't know anyone my age who like went to school specifically for like UX design or human computer interaction. Um, so yeah, I think it is tempting and easy to get specialized early and then you don't know how to do those other things. But there's always ways that you can like wiggle your way into it, even in one of those like really corporate siloed sort of environments, it probably looks good on you if you're like, hey, I'd like to get more experience doing this or that.
I think like what's so special about your program and like this university experience is that you are getting, as Shed mentioned, kind of these multiple aspects of what it means to be a UX designer, researcher, even if you want to get into project or product management. I was going to say back in the day for the older 30s and above, it's one thing that I would look out for is to make sure you're not stuck in specific practices because that's all you know. And I remember seeing that a lot in startup culture because we would get in and we would be taught by a few individuals on how to do user research or how to do UX design. And because you're still new, you're not quite sure if that is the right way to do it. And so it wasn't until I really reached out and went to other companies, joined meetups, product has its own fun teams that we join, but not until like I got exposure, went to conferences, and realized that what we were doing wasn't the best, wasn't best practices. And I think you're constantly having to look for what's a better way to do it potentially, and never get stuck on this is the only way to do it. That was a big, I think, learning from my early on career was what is the more efficient way of doing it, depending on where you are, because startups and enterprises require different things.
Yeah, and I also want to say, like, you don't need to worry too much about your, like, having your own specialization because it might be changed. Like, I thought I wanted to become a UX researcher from the very beginning of my career. So I started like that, but in the end, I became a product designer. So it can't really change. I think it's important to just having those exposure to yourself and learning from the colleagues and also yeah, it's just all about learning experience. Going to the meetup, that also helped me a lot, and talking to other experts how they feel about it. And then you kind of get a sense like, okay, this is for me and that's not for me. So after sometimes you can actually decide. But yeah, I think this will keep changing in the whole career, I believe.
Is there anything that you all would do differently if you could start the project over again?
I think that like at the start, I was kind of learning about GitLab the same time as we were conducting our discovery research. So like if I like could do it again, I would like understand it first before doing the research because sometimes I like learn new things like as we go along and it's already like later in our research that like I like we couldn't really like change or like rank anything. So I think that like having like a deeper understanding and moving forward with that would give me like a better idea of like, oh, so this is what they're talking about, not like, oh, they have this too. Like that kind of um way of working. And like also I think that like there were sometimes like the testings were really cramped and it didn't allow as much time to iterate on the designs or kind of like change like the testing. So like just having more time for like the second half of the project, like on the design and iteration process.
Yeah, I second that. Especially the part where um like we iterated on the design, and I feel um we could have um involve the senior designers into the feedback loop for our design earlier in the process. And um since we didn't have much time later on to um iterate on much of the design after all the user feedback that we got. So I feel like if we were to do it next time, like setting a specific timeline of, oh, so we should get this design improvement done and then send that to the senior designers for feedback by this time. And I think that would be pretty helpful.
I think I definitely, as we've been doing, like definitely second what Moya and An said. Also like one little thing that came to mind was I know for like our second round, like we had like for the last like three interviews, I think had implemented the SUS score for like metrics. And I don't remember if it was that one or another one where like our averages were a little off, but it was because we had forgotten to like implement it. But yeah, just like metrics wise, like implementing those from the beginning.
Yeah, with like what Emily said, I think consistency like is like really important to have like a consistent metric and also like kind of um knowing that like this test we're testing this and then like the like clear changes and like we're testing this because I think for some parts of our testing it was kind of like mixed up like we did this and we changed this and then so we don't have much data on um like clear data that this is like the changes we made. This is um the results of our testing. So I think just having like clear sections, like clear data for each one would help us like show like a compare and contrast of like version one, version two. But for us it's like 1.5, like it's like all like over the place.
And I think for us, like Sunjung, Dasha, Gina, same questions. Like what do we all think about this, you know? I think for us the retro is a bit different because at least some of us, at least me, we're going to do this again next year with other students. So the retro is a little bit more like, yeah, I specifically want to figure out like what did go well and what does need a little bit of iteration. But what do you all think?
I'm thinking if it would be useful to have a bit of a GitLab, not a crash course, but more of like demystify GitLab to where it may not look so intimidating if it did, to anybody who's outside of software development or hasn't that much familiarity with source control or Git. But how can we demystify GitLab and make it super accessible in the first week or so?
Hmm.
Yeah, I had a similar thought of if we, I don't know, designate one of our weekly meetings to include part of it as a walkthrough demo and have, because we created that GitLab project for the students to be able to use, but maybe if we had done an exercise where we're all using it so that they have more time to learn about that feature area. Um, maybe that could have been useful because I mean, we could link as many demos as we want, but watching a video doesn't always lead to the same results as actually doing the task.
I
Good
guess
recommendation.
I was thinking too, like, if for whatever reason time happened to be a problem in terms of like taking up time for an intro to GitLab, I can't remember like, or I guess also like question to Moyan on like, were you guys able to watch any like kind of YouTube videos at the beginning, maybe explaining Git? Because I remember I watched one and I just like pulled it up right now that it was like somewhat useful, but I mean I definitely remember still being confused at the beginning, so I guess it definitely wasn't enough, but.
Yeah, I did watch like a couple of videos, but like my understanding of the issue is like how they navigated multiple not issues, not like the actual issue itself. Like that was like my thought at the start of the project. So like yeah, I was still confused like even after watching the videos.
Yeah, same for me. I think like I actually learned from like watching the user actually navigating the site more than me like watching from the videos. So I
Mm.
just like stop after like 1, 2 videos.
That's true. I'm also thinking that like I guess it was kind of just part of the like project process where it's like the narrowing scope too, where it's like we thought it was gonna be a like designing a whole like kind of system or like yeah, a whole kind of system and it was just like was only the page. I guess one also like side curiosity question I had was, and I don't know if like how hard difficult this one is to answer, but like do you in your guys' opinion, like are there any kind of positions or like titles that are more in jeopardy than others? Just because it came to
Mm.
mind somewhere in between this meeting. Remember Linda at one point had mentioned that like with her company, like the content writers had just gotten let go. And so I was wondering like, have you guys seen any specific kind yeah, roles being let go?
Not at GitLab. I feel like in general in the software industry, design headcount is always too low. It's kept too low on purpose, I think. Our time is not valued as much as engineers' time. Um, it's kind of expected that designers do some like kind of glue work, and it's expected that designers will probably cover kind of more than one project a lot of the times. Um, and that doesn't necessarily change even as you like go go up, like our principal product designer, Pedro is like extremely thin, he's across like so many things. I think you just get like better at doing it and you get more kudos for doing it as you go. But like in terms of positions like within UX, I definitely could see technical writing or content writing being more susceptible to someone in management thinking it can be replaced by AI because it's like, oh, well, they're just writing words. And like, obviously, it takes more talent than that. But that's something where I could see someone in management who wants to cut jobs and replace with AI being like, well, it's just words. Like a robot can do that kind of thing. Um, I mean, I think a lot of trends you see in roles that go away are like roles that exist specifically to do kind of like glue work tend to get eliminated, and then it's just the responsibility of adjacent roles to do those things. So, like, we have a really excellent research coordinator. A lot of places don't have that. And it's just like up to you to do your own, stuff. Um, It does seem like there's more and more demand for designers who have some technical skills. Um, I think that the dream, and it's not my dream, but the dream of, I guess, our capitalist overlords, we're gonna make this video public, right? Shoot. Is like they they want to minimize how many people it takes to do something, because the more people there are, the more money you have to pay them and the less profit you get. So like they want designers who can code and they want coders who can design, kind of thing. Um, so it probably will behoove you in your career to like build some technical skills. But in terms of like specific roles, yeah, I mean, we haven't seen any of that kind of thing, in a while at GitLab, so I haven't seen it firsthand, but
I I unfortunately have seen a lot of this. I think I shared this, but for my time here at GitLab, I took a break from my traditional product roles and did consulting for 4 years, where I consulted for 15 plus different organizations. It's a really quick turnaround and you get to see a lot. I would say everything is very trend based, and every organization has its own ups and downs. There's times where product and UX get squeezed into where you're mostly bare bones, and then those individuals leave, and then they realize, oh, wait, the people that we've been putting all of this work on left to go to other places because they have that option, and we have to start over again. And that's when I usually was called in to build up another team from scratch. But it was a result of some hiring practices and just bad decision making on an org level. So I would say every organization is a little different, and the organization and the company you work for really matters. Um, I think one of the reasons we may have not seen this at GitLab is because we do hire very thoughtfully. And one thing about our capital overlords is that they do realize there is a real dollar value associated with people leaving and then hiring them again. And I think if a company doesn't recognize that, I would be wary and cautious of working there. So as you're looking for roles, suss it out. Are they there's like a really good, forget the book, I can drop it in our notes. But more like, what kind of organization are they? Are they a sales-led organization, which to me means there's going to be a lot more thrashing and you're going to have to really cater to what sales needs? Are they product-led, where it's everything around, hey, how can we make this the best product and actually solve our customer problems? Some are UX-led and or design-led, which I have seen very rarely done successfully. So suss out what kind of company are they trying to be and what do they care about. And if they keep, for instance, saying, well, we're actually really wanting to expand and get our next round of investment, that's probably not a company that's looking for UX, but probably looking for more of a product uh, that they can easily sell, and maybe there's not a longevity there. So I would think through, what are you wanting from an employer versus what an employer wants from you as well. I feel like I've been giving many TED Talks today. I apologize. I think my caffeine is slowly kicking in, but I think that's the biggest thing when younger in my career. I wish I phrased it the other way to myself, as in they're needing you as much as you need them, but also trends. Yeah. I was thinking of like roles, so back in the day, QA was something really big. And then there was a trend where all quality assurance engineering kind of went away as there was a rise of TDD, or test-driven development, and like extreme programming. Um, and then I'm now seeing QA kind of slowly come back. Even within GitLab, that's something we've been talking about. So everything's a bit cyclical.
mhm.
Yeah, one just thing that I wish I had done when I was came out of college is that you're studying something very specific to being a UX designer. So you have a lot of that experience and knowledge that other people that are not studying that they don't have. So use that to your advantage and just be confident in the skills that you learned there. Whether or not you have the industry experience, you do have the knowledge that you got from this really good program at Tufts and the experience from the capstone project and potentially other projects that you've done. So use that to your advantage.
Any other thoughts, GitLab folks, on things that like went well, could have been improved this time around?
I don't know how to solve this, but the recruiting always seems to be a slow part of the process.
Mm,
Um, I think Chad, you had some ideas of maybe us just having a pool, like recruiting before the students even start.
yeah. Yeah, I think that if like I don't know how to do it specifically. I've never really done something like this before, but like basically kind of like, pre-reserving some some participants to be like, we're going to have students who are doing user research in, late January, early February, and we don't know what they're going to be doing yet, but like, can you be available for that kind of thing? And if we could have those people lined up, then that like primes the pump a bit. Um, because like in order to do that part, we don't really need to wait for for the students to know what they're working on.
Yeah,
To a
yeah,
certain extent anyway. For problem validation, I think it's okay. You may want more specific personas later or something, but
yeah. We could maybe sync with Karen about it
mhm,
and see what if she has any thoughts.
yeah. It's also so tricky because the nature of our product is such that the students can't just like recruit their classmates and friends.
Mhm.
Um, like that's the classic, I'm starting a silly little, I'm doing like a silly little startup app product design thing, like test it out on your friends because it's about like photos or some kind of. Can't really do that with this.
Yeah, actually, is the so when I remember when I was at Tufts, the CS majors were using
Hmm.
GitHub. Are they, Moya, Emily, do you know if they're still using GitHub or if maybe they're using GitLab?
When I asked my friend about it, because she's a CS major and I was just telling her about the project, she didn't tell me specifically, but she definitely knew GitLab, but it wasn't like a thing like, oh yeah, we use it. So I want to say they don't like universally use it. But like I was even thinking like maybe even thinking of like because there's like select few who have like maybe regularly. So like if we were to do attempt like personal networks, like kind of like almost like a like informal screener of like just making sure that they do use GitLab enough if it was like a personal use type of thing.
Yeah, I'm in another club and they do use GitHub, but they don't use GitLab.
Or is it still an option for us to recruit like using like some platform, like respondents, like normally that helps us get participant a little faster?
I have no idea. I
Yeah,
think
I think we should talk to Karen
yes.
anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly think that one thing I would like to see more of is pet cameos.
Oh.
This is the
He's being a little needy because I forgot to bring his bed in. That's usually what I do, like move it from.
mm,
Yeah. So he's just wanting to be here. But I do have a more of like necessarily an area for us to look at is as we're introducing and kind of asking students to decide which project, could we have done a better job of pitching them? Not necessarily in kind of a pick this one, but more of a give you more details. Because in hindsight, I think the one you decided to choose, yes, I did propose it and I was a little biased, but there were obviously like really good ideas there. One from Victor and like the rest of the UX team. But could we have done a better job of maybe getting the idea across and what's the customer pain point behind it?
This is something that I thought a lot about early in their semester because I went to like the first class session, I think, of their class and basically just like read the descriptions that folks who had come up with project ideas had written. And after that call, I was like, oh man, like they're not gonna pick us. Like that was like so like dead fish, like, oh no. And while I was like spiraling about that, I was like, oh, what I need to do next year is make the people who have project proposals make a video and I'll just play the video. And I think that that is gonna help for sure because like these are not my project ideas. I was just like the messenger and I was like, oh, I don't have like really a great ability to like answer questions about these. Like I can speculate.
Yeah, I also feel bad for Chad like on that day because I don't think like any other like students were particularly like interested in that project at that time besides me.
No, yeah, that's really funny to me because I think, and we've talked about this before. I don't know if we mentioned this to you guys, but like On was the first one. I think like in the first class because we had like kind of two different rounds. It was like in class picking, and then there was like a little reorganizing, and On was like, oh yeah, like nobody saw my vision, like nobody saw my vision. But I think the videos do sound helpful in terms of like kind of conceptualizing more what the project would be like because I think maybe that was also a deterrent was like didn't really couldn't really envision like what it was that we were going to be working on. Um, and then also like if you did want selling points, I think I would definitely because I remember you guys had mentioned like um the idea of like, oh, it's better to come in like don't be wary about picking this project because if you don't know anything because it's good, it's actually a skill more else almost. But I think even just like adding on to it like and it's a skill that you'll gain like you like as the student specifically because like you'll come across like fields that you'll know nothing about and have to like kind of venture into. I think that also could be like a selling point that like I mean I like eventually I got there like I was like oh wait this would be a beneficial thing for me um but like for people who like that's not their initial thought like I think that could be also be helpful because it definitely is a good or it definitely was a beneficial thing for me.
And I think it also would have been nice to bring in the potential counterparts. Like for my case, when I like put my idea there, I already talked to my PM and engineering manager that like this is something that like potentially student can pick it up. So once this happens, like we have to make some time for this and from this milestone something to until when, so that they can plan for their capacity. And I think if you're going to this route to providing demo video or something and already bringing them in, like it doesn't need to be a single person just pitching the idea, but sometimes just having a collaborative effort. I mean, yeah, I think that would give us students better idea, like, okay, what is this project about? Like, what would be the final deliverable that they can envision? I know that
Mhm.
I didn't do a great job on that. So yeah, it's also a reflection to myself.
Well, this year I think it worked a bit differently than in the past because I mean, Gina, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think last year and in previous years, we just gave Linda a list and then we heard back later what happened.
Right.
This year, she was like, "Oh yeah, come to the class. I'm going to have everybody, like everybody who's a sponsor, like just kind of say what their project idea is, whatever." She's like, "Don't worry, you don't have to present anything." And then I was on the Zoom call and I could totally hear like other local sponsors presenting and showing slides, and I was like, ah, dang it, I should have also cheated. So it does kind of seem like she wants a little bit more of like kind of pitchiness. So I think if we maybe kind of make like a little list of like hit these points in a video that's, whatever, like max, 3 to 5 minutes long, that will help with that, I think.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't think she's done that in the past. But I do think it's a good idea because it gives the students a better idea of what they're getting into.
Mhm.
One last, I know we're coming up on time, but I did just want to mention one positive thing that was new this year that I thought was really great was the mock grooming session. And even Linda brought up the fact that it made this group unique by actually having experience doing that. I would love to see that in future years as well. I think it's really valuable to be able to get that experience and collaborate with engineers and not just stop at like, this is our design, you know.
Definitely. Yeah, and thank you, Joshua, for bringing Dylan into that.
He kind of already volunteered, so the ask was super easy. Like not a lot of effort on my end.
Cool. Well, we are at time. It is your like finals week and stuff, so I'm sure you got a lot of things to go do. But thank you all so much. I think it's been a successful semester, and we were glad to help you out.
Nice. Thank you guys. It was genuinely like so lovely to work with you guys and just be able to get your feedback and everything. Like you guys were so helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys so
Thanks.
much. And yeah, please keep in touch.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's another thing I should mention is that like please, I'm sure you will anyway, leverage this project as much as you can in like portfolios, whatever. Um, I won't speak for everybody, but like if you want like feedback on any like portfolio materials you make as a result of this, or even like that's not fully about this, like let me know. I'd gladly like give you some feedback on that.
Also,
Really
one little
helpful.
yeah, honestly, yeah. One little too like positive to that. I know we're like on time, but I just remember at the beginning, our first meeting when you guys established like, oh no, we're a resource for you guys and like this is more of a like a feedback source. I think that was a huge shift. I remember like we were talking about it afterwards and I was like, oh okay, like what a relief. Like that definitely like changes up the how we had initially thought, or at least how I initially thought about kind of sponsor versus Tufts team. But yeah, that was also really nice.
Good. Cool. We'll make sure we do that again.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm writing that down. I think we can wrap up if we're all done. See you, everybody. Have a good
Thank you
summer.
so much.
Much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.